John Lofton here. I hope you guys are having a great day and everything's going good in your world. Super excited here today. We're going to have a great show. And wow, it was good. Yesterday we went up to see some family and up in Lake City, Iowa, which, as you know, was just hit by, well, maybe you don't know, depending on where you're watching this, but in Iowa, there was a tornado that hit south of town there, and after 5 years, they had a second tornado. 5 years ago, there was a big tornado that came through, damaged the high school, damaged some buildings, and I was just talking to Raven. I said, it's like that town just cannot cut a break. About a week or two ago, before this happened, a very well-known organ factory, or organ repair, I should say, and I forget the name. Producer, help me out with the name of the organ. Dobson Organs, thank you. And they burned down to the ground after, 50 years of business, something like that. And it's really sad to see. So we hope they rebuild. But in the midst of all that, I was just thinking about, what it's going to take to rebuild a business, and what it's going to take to get those supplies in stock and get them there. And what is it going to cost, and is insurance going to pay for it, despite the, as you probably know, the inflation that we're seeing with prices and all of that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because even our own home back on May 9th, we had a hailstorm come through here with, by the airport, it was like baseball size hail. I think ours was more like ping pong or golf ball size hail here, but oh, July, sorry. But I said May 9th, didn't I? My brain is just not there right now. But July 9th, I apologize. But yeah, it was back on July 9th, excuse me. And but even our own house wasn't spared. And so now we have an adjuster coming out and assessing our damage to roof and gutters and things like that. So it's sad to see it. It really is. And I don't really have any words for it, honestly, other than, what's it going to cost? And is insurance going to pay for this extra cost? Because a lot of stuff has been going up by as much as 30-40%. Case in point would be the used car market right now. I can't tell you how many emails and even a text message that I've gotten this week asking if I want to sell, my car. And I'm like, well, it's our only car, so that's not going to happen. I've even heard some reports that, some cars, you could sell them now for more than what you bought them for, which I'll probably know this. Cars don't hold their value all that well. They really don't. And so for a car to have gained value, like an asset, like you would think about your house, is really insane. And my point here being, is this all going to die off, or are prices going to settle down and go kind of back to what we're going to, let's just describe as normal rates or normal habits here? Or is this going to be the new normal? And if so, how is our income and, economics of everything going to be affected where, we're going to be able to survive and be able to pay for things? We've been having all these, stimulus packages, and it's not like there's not a decent amount of people with money right now. I've been hearing even more reports that people are actually doing the right thing and saving, stuff like that. In our case, we weren't really able to do that. Our stimulus money had to go to pay bills and things like that because of the kidney transplant back in April. So we didn't really have the option of saving it as much as we wanted to. And now we, at the very least, we'll have, $1,000 deductible for our homeowner's insurance, and so that's going to stink, so how are we going to pay for those things? And then the other picture here is, how do we deal with this emotionally? Even from a practical economic standpoint, emotionally, this is so hard. The first time we ever recognized, I would say, emotional stress with shortages and price increases was right as the COVID-19 pandemic was first starting, when things like toilet paper and cleaning supplies and those sort of things were in scarce quantity. Manufacturers really struggled to kind of keep up with demand on all of that. And so I was going to kind of dive into this a little bit more today. So if you have any thoughts, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, always for future videos. Comment below, and we'll try to get your comments on the air. Producer Raven is here, and she's been in my ear, as you guys can probably tell, kind of queuing me up here a little bit. And she's going to be watching those comments the entire show, and she's going to either message me or get into my ear with any of those comments as they may come in as we kind of go through the show today. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, how did you handle the shortages? Did you go out and buy as much of a product that you could, that you thought if you didn't do it was going to be in short supply? Maybe you didn't. Maybe it didn't affect you. Maybe you were able to get the supplies that you need when you needed it. I want to know, how did this whole shortage, especially this last year, affect you guys? And economically, do you feel like you're paying more? Are you noticing the price increases when you go to the grocery store? Are you noticing those things when you want to buy a new computer or a look at a car? You know, I'm kind of curious to see what you guys are noticing in your day to day. So. But yeah, it's going to be a good show, and I'm happy to get as many opinions and viewpoints on air as possible. So to give you our story of how this affected us last year with the COVID-19, outbreak and all of that, is it did and it didn't. And I guess I'll elaborate on that just a little bit here, but it did affect us in the sense that, yeah, I mean, things were a little bit harder to find. We had to kind of time it right when stores were going to stock up, when there was going to be an inventory day, and then be like right there shortly after. I remember there being, limits on quantity. You could only buy one of an item, and it had to be a certain quantity or whatever. And there wasn't these big jumbo packs anymore of toilet paper and that. You got lucky if you had a 4-pack. And so I guess that's kind of my point here, is just when we did this, it was hard and a little bit anxiety inducing. But I always kind of had this thought that, we're going to get through. There will be a way to find XYZ commodity that we needed. I personally didn't see it as a holy cow, the world's coming to an end kind of moment. I took this more as, yeah, this sucks right now. It's a little aggravating and frustrating when you're going to 2 or 3 different places just to find some eggs. Even I remember that day, and you're just trying to find stuff, and it's frustrating. But I knew it wouldn't last, and I knew that if we didn't panic buy and go out and buy as much of an item as we could, then we'd be fine. And sure enough, we survived. And I don't feel like I'm any further emotional distress than anybody else would be on talking about the average person. But I know there's a lot of people who are and really did get impacted by that. And so I'm really interested to hear your stories. When we got sick, that was another little dilemma. We needed cold medicine and things like that just to help with symptoms. We needed tissue and things like that, and they were really hard to find, especially if you're not feeling very well. You really don't like going out shopping. I can tell you that services like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and grocery store delivery were huge for us to be self-sufficient in that. I think that that's honestly where those type of things took off. And I'm thankful that we do live in a bigger city in that particular case. I don't particularly care to live in Des Moines for the rest of my life. No offense, Des Moines residents who might be watching. But we're just not city folk. We prefer country, rural areas. I don't know how else to say it, but living in the city is just anxiety inducing for us. And we don't particularly care for it. So when you're going through all of that and you're in a city that had the most strict mask mandates, the most strict COVID policies, where a lot of rural Iowa, for example, didn't have those things. For us, our experience was very different than, let's say, someone living in a rural area. And, I'm not sure, because I'm assuming the general stores in these little towns probably had a hard time getting supplies than, let's say, your local Walmart did. And a lot of people, even in Iowa, might be 30 minutes away from their closest Walmart. And so I can imagine that maybe some of those folks were affected, at least in that way. Maybe you didn't have the mask mandates and stuff and weren't dying to get all the cleaning supplies, but maybe you had, other issues related to just, getting somewhere and finding something local. But anyway, that was kind of our thing. And then I would say even by mid-summer last year to late summer, let's say August, September, things got better. We honestly started to notice that, it was getting easier to find stuff. Manufacturers were really ramping up production. People learned how to make their own homemade hand sanitizer. And there was plenty of recipes you could find on YouTube about making your own stuff. And so things got better. And actually earlier this year, I read a report that said that a lot of places that were making hand sanitizer can't get rid of it fast enough. The price on that has dropped so dramatically, and they can't hardly get rid of it. So there you go. I mean, this is what I wanted to instill in people, is that when we have dramatic, very abrupt changes in the way things are priced based off of supply and demand, there's a lot of demand because those items became super hot commodities as the result of a national crisis, let's say. And I think that's where a lot of that derived from. Now, going forward, as the topic of today suggests, the shortages crises, they get hyped up, on TV, and you think if you don't go out and get them, and if you don't buy now, it's just going to keep going up. How are we going to deal with that? Are those real? Is this a sort of a hyper inflated sort of issue? Will things eventually go back? I'm going to start off pointing off gas prices here and what they were, let's say 5-6 years ago. If you guys remember when we saw $5 a gallon gasoline, you could buy milk cheaper. And now it's better. Now it is going back up again, but I would say it's going back up and down in accordance to what a normal market looks like. I don't think that we're seeing a increase based off of panic. Now, the increase short term that we saw in the southern United States earlier, a couple months ago, I guess, would be the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack incident, where, that did create some panic and gas stations really did run out of gas. And that's affecting us right now. That's definitely a factor. But again, I think prices in that will stabilize. And I think that we shouldn't panic. And while I'm not a professional economist, I've been around enough, I'm sure hopefully you have too, that you've seen prices go up and down. I think that's just the nature of our economy, is that over time, as wealth increases, inflation increases, and how you manage all of that, I think is a fine art in and of itself. And I know we trust what we call the Fed, which adjusts our interest rates and ability to assess our GDP as a country. But I personally don't subscribe to this idea that just because something rose 20 or 30% overnight for whatever reason doesn't mean that it's going to stay at that price. Now, is there a time and place that you really do want to act because things are probably going to stay up for a while? Yeah, I can definitely see it. And it's a tough call on when exactly that moment is. If you got to have something, you got to have something. Like our roof's not really going to be a negotiable thing that we're going to need. We're going to end up paying whatever the market value is for that roof at that time that they go to order supplies. And that's just how it's going to be. Now, do I hope that it's as lower than it is expected? Yeah, absolutely. Wood material, things like that. A year ago, plywood was about $19-20 for a sheet or so. Now it's over 70. And now it's going back down, I heard, again. But my producer was kind enough here to do some research, so I'm going to pull up some stuff related to, I guess you would say, different sectors. The first one that I'm going to pull up here for me is the Wall Street Journal article, and it was about expecting the microconductor chips shortages. And how long that's going to last. And in short, it looks like they're predicting to have shortages with our semiconductors until 2022. And what I really want you guys to understand about that is, car prices are going up because our cars are increasingly reliant on those microchips. And when automakers are getting those microchips in, they're putting them into the most highly popular vehicles. Let's say if you're Ford, you're putting it into your F-150s. But the used car prices now have shot up big time. Kind of wish I held on to our Chevy Malibu for a little while, and would have just, I don't know, just taken that and waited for a little while and got a little bit more money for it. But, you know, at the time, you don't know. We have no clue on what our economy is going to do at scale. So I just want you guys to be, cognizant of that. And anyway, I'm just kind of looking over here just real quick here. Here we go. And I'm going to share this with you here real quick. So this is some of the research our producer found. I'm referencing this first article, and you can't see it because I crop it out a little bit, but I'll add these links onto the show description. After this live stream is over, you'll notice that the live feed will delete, but then the recorded copy that's trimmed up so you don't have to listen to the countdown timer for 5 minutes will be removed. And so that's kind of how we've been doing it. So just an FYI on that. But anyway, so yeah, this was the referencing, and that the shortage was expected until 2022. Now, there was another article I was kind of taking a look at on my own that talked about, what semiconductors are in stock. Because when the pandemic happened, car buying dropped dramatically, which meant that automakers weren't ordering as much chips for their computers and that. So those manufacturers shifted to making, the type of microchips and processors for computers and electronic devices like your tablets and smartphones and things like that. And so those never saw really a shortage. So if you think that your cell phone is going to go up in price, probably not, at least not in the short term, based off of what we've seen the last couple months and based off of the research that I've been able to uncover suggests. But I will say too that it's possible if automakers start demanding way more chips to catch up, a manufacturing processor can only produce, let's say, XYZ units every day. And so if the demand and the pricing for those, essentially like a bid, if you will, goes up, then yeah, down the road, we could see shortages in electronic devices. So that's just something that we want to keep in the back of our mind here as we kind of go forward here. But I don't want you guys to kind of get hung up on this idea that, you got to go out and rush buy. I think take a step back, moderate it, especially if it's a device or an item that you don't necessarily have to have right now, other than things like food, shelter, clothing, and all of those things. If it's things that you can wait on, please do, and what I would tell you is wait, especially bigger purchases. Wait, think about it, and ask yourself every single day, do I still need this item? Am I still running into issues without this item? Am I saving enough? Is there something else that I might need to put in a higher priority than this device or this item, commodity, if you will? And if you can answer those questions and truthfully say that the item that you want to buy comes out higher than other things, then yeah, you're going to pay whatever you got to pay to get that device, whether it's 10% of what regular market value is or 20%. You're going to end up paying for it because why? You've identified a need and a necessity for that item. And so I just want you guys to kind of prioritize those things in your mind and on paper even. And what I used to do when I was a kid, and this is how my parents taught me how to weigh my necessities versus my wants. And it was a pros and cons sheet. What are the pros of getting this item? What are the cons then? And truthfully think about your cons. Like, yeah, I'm going to have less money for this other item. This item could break. What happens? I don't know, but it just depends on the situation. But you sort of just start writing down your notes about the item and then sit on it. Try to walk away from it for a little bit and then come back to it and then do the same thing. Is it a burning thing? For example, I'll give you a case in point. So there was a light in our garage. Our original light that came with the house was pretty weak, just a regular dumb bulb. Did not have a lot of light for the garage. And I do sometimes do some work out in the garage, some shop work. I've got some power tools, things like that. And I would like to have an abundance of light. And I happened to see an item come across on Amazon at first, and then I saw it in Menards. And it was a, oh man, I wish I could pull this up real fast for you guys, but I don't think I can quickly. But it was this like LED light, and it was super bright. It was like quoted at like 10,000 lumen, and it had like 3 fins full of an array of very bright, high output LEDs. And it was cool because it just screwed into the normal light bulb socket, and there wasn't anything special or particular about it. It just sort of, well, worked. And so, I knew that we didn't have to have it at the time. And I sat on that thing for probably about a year. And for 6 months, every time we'd go in Menards, I'd see that item on that shelf, and it would remind me, hey, am I still needing this? And I remember when at the time we were still building our shelving, not really shelving, but I guess the platform for our laundry room for our cupboards to go on, because we were building an over-the-counter to go above the washer and dryer. Anyway, and I've been working in there. We've been trying to organize that, and I kept thinking about it. And we ended up sitting on it for about a year. So earlier this year, I finally broke down and had a little extra money, and we bought it. And I'm very happy with it. It works great. But that's just an example of how I processed, a need. And I didn't just, it's about resisting the urge to impulse buy, resisting the urge to do something based off of a knee-jerk reaction. And I guess to summarize, that's what I want you guys to take away too, is that knee-jerk reactions aren't always the best solution. And salespeople are really good about getting you to make knee-jerk reactions that you'll probably regret later. All right, so moving on here. This next one was talking about restaurant workers and things like that. So I'm going to kind of pull that up over here. Whoops, there we go. This one was relating to the fact that, restaurants really did struggle during the pandemic. A lot of restaurants closed across the United States. A lot of them were really, really struggling just to keep their doors open. A lot of them were only opening maybe a day or two. Some restaurants in certain states had to close via mandate by the government that said that all indoor and outdoor dining must cease, basically shutting down restaurants. And there's some serious constitutional arguments that can be made there, because you just totally hindered somebody from making a living. And I would say majority of cases, the ones that I've heard, those businesses never, ever received enough compensation to cover for the losses that they had. But the beauty of this is, in 2021 now that things are opening up, a lot of restaurants, including the ones that you can kind of see over here. One of the quotes from this one, which was from NPR.org, and like I said, I'm going to copy this and put this in the show description later on. But it basically said, yeah, they were thrilled to open up. And from day one, they talked about how busy they were. And the other thing was, they couldn't get any work because they got laid off during the pandemic, so they went and found other jobs. The job market right now for hospitality and retail, as we'll take a look at here in a second, is booming. They just could not find enough people to work in a kitchen. You started seeing sign-on bonuses. You started seeing massive pay raises. I think in some cases, I heard a story of $20 an hour to be a dishwasher. I mean, that is absolutely crazy to me. And so, wow, that's incredible. And I don't know what to think about it, other than I've never seen this in my lifetime of a restaurant not being able to staff its employees and not being able to carry on normal business. They're so overwhelmed that they can't even get enough people through the door to hire. I know Raven has been looking at a job with Amazon. Every single day it seems like there's new shifts and new openings, and you can't get enough people through the door. And what I would tell somebody in this particular case is, if you're struggling with money and you're at least half able-bodied, meaning there are jobs you can do, go work. There's an abundance of jobs. Go be a dishwasher for $20 an hour, right? I'm not saying that all restaurants are offering that, but what I'm just, being I don't know, using that one example, if you will. But they're paying a lot more money than what you think they might, and you can actually make a decent living to support yourself, at least right now. But inflation will go up. Obviously, these employers got to charge more for folks, but the demand for eating out is there, which means people have disposable income. And so the last one that I was going to point out here would be related to retail workers. And my wife, I asked her if she'd be on camera for this segment, and she said no. She just does not like to be on camera. Okay, I'll deal. But retail workers, every day she comes home and tells me how short-staffed they were, how few people come in, people call out, people are quitting left, right, and the other. And there's a stat here that I really want to draw you guys' attention to. And that was this one right here I just lost it myself. Oh, there it is. Some 64,000 retail workers have put in their 2 weeks notice. And for a lot of them, one quote was, "It was really just a dismal time. It made me realize that this isn't worth it." A 23-year-old who has left $11 an hour job as an aquatic specialist at a national pet chain. And she went on to say, "My life isn't worth a dead-end job." And this is really interesting because there were times in American history that whether it was a dead-end job, whether you're a coal miner, a truck driver, something like that, you were just happy to have a job. You were happy to be employed by somebody. So a shortage in workers is going to be a real thing. But instead of letting us look at this as a negative, let's look at this as opportunity. Let's look at this as an opportunity to get people who otherwise wouldn't be in the workforce, people with disabilities, people who are felons just trying to get on their feet. I would argue, and I'm sure there's studies that would back me up. Let's say you just got out of jail. Yeah, you're a convicted felon. I understand from a business perspective, it's hard to trust you right now. But at the same time, businesses can't be as picky. If they need people, you have an opportunity to get in the door. And I would argue too that studies would suggest that if you're working and you have a stable platform, stable house, a shelter over your head, that you are going to be far more likely to succeed and not reoffend and end back up in prison than we would in a normal job market. And so let's look at this as an opportunity, folks. It seems like the connotation here that we hear on TV is this negative perspective. This is really kind of a good thing. And instead of looking at it as negative, and let's really encourage people who are saying, "Hey, I'm getting more money on unemployment," or I've got this other, job that's, maybe doesn't pay as much, but it's not in retail. And I think that if you're not going back into hospitality, if you've been in hospitality and retail for a number of years and then got kicked out and you think that the industry is dying, I can probably reassure you that it's not dying. And in retail, there's a lot of opportunities to grow if you can get with the right people, right management. But it's all about your ambition and drive, what you want to do for schooling, education, things like that. But I think that there are definitely opportunities to grow, succeed, become management, do, office and managerial roles. And those are honest, good careers. No, not everybody needs to be a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist to find success. And I think that our economy will be fine in the long run. I'm scared at what it's going to do to taxes right now with these trillions and trillions of dollars that are being pumped into a country that is so full of debt. If any one of us had that much debt, comparatively speaking, we'd be filing bankruptcy so fast our head would spin. So we got to keep that in mind, folks, that this country will probably be fine. And I say probably because nobody knows the exact future, but let's take the opportunities that we have right now to learn, grow, and invest with each other. So that's kind of what I've got here for you today. This was a really interesting topic. This actually was largely led by my producer for the first time. She was able to gather a lot of this research for us. So I got to give a round of applause to Raven here for that. And thank you guys so much. I'm happy to have the live viewership. It means a lot. I really hope for this show to grow and do more, be able to have more people on, more perspective, maybe even a guest host. So if you're interested in any of those things or being a regular contributor to the show, please reach out to us. You can do that through Facebook. You can do that through the comment section below, and then I will reply direct message with contact information to get a hold of us. But anyway, we're going to wrap this whole thing up, and you guys have a good rest of your day. And we'll see you next week here live for Between the Lines. My name is John Lofton here. Sundays, 4 p.m. Centrals are always on time. Take care, guys. We love you, and God bless.